The twin suns of Arvel 9 were falling behind broken metal towers. Their red light painted the ruins like blood. The streets were quiet except for the wind that carried the smell of smoke and old iron. Among the shadows, two alien sisters walked slowly. Their small feet were covered in dust, their hands holding each other tightly as they searched for something, anything to eat. Lyra, the older one, was thin and tired, but her eyes still burned with strength. Her younger sister, Nali, could barely walk. Her stomach growled loudly and her tiny voice trembled. "Lyra, I'm hungry." Lyra stopped, her heart breaking. She had no food to give. For 3 days they had eaten nothing but rainwater and scraps of old fruit peel. Around them, the city that once shined with silver towers now stood dead, destroyed by years of war between humans and aliens. The air was full of dust, the sky dim with smoke. They passed broken market stalls, empty shops, and fallen statues. Everywhere they saw faces like theirs, hungry, hopeless, afraid. The alien guards watched from tall walls, their weapons ready, but they offered no help. Food was only for the rich. For everyone else, there was silence and hunger. Lyra tried to stay strong. She looked at Nali and whispered, "Don't cry, little one. I'll find something for you." But her voice shook. She searched the ground again, turning old boxes, kicking trash, praying to find one bite of bread. Nothing. Only dirt and cold metal. A group of alien men stood near a fire made of broken furniture. They laughed as they ate from metal cans. Lyra approached, her voice soft. "Please, can you share a little?" "My sister, she's starving." One of them looked up. His eyes were sharp and cruel. "Go away, beggar," he said. "You should have left with your human friends." The others laughed. Lyra's face went pale. She grabbed Nali's hand and walked away quickly. Behind them, the laughter echoed like knives. When they reached the edge of the street, Nali began to cry. Her small body shook. "I can't walk anymore, Lyra." "It hurts." She fell to her knees. Lyra knelt beside her, holding her close. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away fast. She couldn't show weakness. Not here. The sun disappeared behind the ruins and darkness covered the city. The neon signs flickered, casting strange lights over their faces. Lyra looked at the stars above, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, someone help us," but no one answered. Only the cold wind did. She remembered their parents. They had died in the Great Famine 2 years ago when the human warships cut off all trade routes. The elders told everyone that humans were monsters, that they had stolen their planet's life. Lyra had believed it too, until now. Now all she knew was pain and hunger. She lifted Nali into her arms and carried her to an old building that used to be a school. The walls were cracked and the windows were gone, but at least it kept out the wind. She laid Nali down on the floor, wrapping her in a torn blanket. Nali looked up with half-closed eyes. "Will we eat tomorrow?" she asked. Lyra forced a smile. "Yes, I promise." But she didn't believe her own words. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. A storm was coming. She needed to find food before morning. Her eyes fell on a strange light far away, a landing beacon flashing blue and white. It was coming from outside the city walls. A ship had landed, her heart beat faster. No one landed here anymore, only traders. Or humans. She looked down at her sister, asleep from exhaustion. Then she stood and walked to the window. The beacon flickered again in the distance like a star calling her name. Could it be a supply ship? Could someone there help? Her mind argued. The elders said humans killed for fun, but her heart said something else. She was out of choices. That night she stayed awake, watching the rain fall through the holes in the roof. Her stomach ached. Every drop of rain felt like a reminder of her failure. She touched Nali's forehead. The little girl's skin was cold. "I won't let you die," she whispered. "Even if I have to sell my soul." As the storm grew stronger, Lyra made her decision. When dawn came, she would go to the edge of the city. She would find whoever had landed that ship, whether it was alien or human. It didn't matter anymore. All she wanted was one thing: to save her sister. And in that desperate wish, her destiny began. The moment that would change not only her life but the fate of both species forever. The next morning came with heavy gray clouds. The city was still half asleep, quiet and cold. Lyra woke up early, her body stiff from the hard floor. Her sister Nali was still sleeping, breathing weakly. Lyra brushed her silver hair and whispered, "Stay here, little one." I'll come back soon." She covered her with the old blanket and stepped outside into the mist. The air smelled of smoke and rust. Broken drones floated overhead, lifeless reminders of the old war. Lyra walked fast through the empty streets until she reached the edge of the city, the great wall that once protected them from humans. Now it only kept the poor trapped inside. Beyond it, she could see the flashing beacon again, the blue and white light that had called to her all night. Her heart raced. Somewhere beyond those gates, someone had landed. Maybe a traitor, maybe a soldier, or maybe a human. The guards at the gate were half asleep. Lyra hid behind a pile of metal scrap until they looked away, then slipped through a hole in the fence. The wind outside was stronger, carrying the smell of grass and oil. It felt strange, open, wild, free. She followed the light for nearly an hour until she reached a wide landing field covered in mud. There a ship stood, small, gray, with strange symbols on its side. The engines were quiet, but smoke still rose from the landing pads. Lyra crouched behind a rock, watching carefully. Then she saw him. A tall man in a dark uniform was unloading boxes from the ship. His face was human. Pale skin, brown hair, eyes sharp but tired. He moved slowly, humming to himself as he worked. Lyra felt her hands tremble. So it was true. A human had come here. She remembered all the stories the elders told, that humans burned villages, stole children, and poisoned rivers. But this one didn't look like a monster. He looked lonely. Her stomach growled again. She held it, whispering, "Don't make noise." But it was too late. The sound echoed softly across the landing field. The man stopped working. He turned, scanning the area. "Hello?" he called in a deep voice. "Someone there?" Lyra froze. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. He stepped closer, holding up his hands slowly to show he wasn't armed. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." His voice was calm, not cruel. That confused her more than anything. Finally, she stood up from behind the rock. The wind blew her torn clothes and silver hair across her face. The man's eyes widened in surprise. "You're an Arvelian," he said softly. "I thought this city was empty." Lyra didn't answer. She looked at the boxes near his feet, food supplies. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "My sister is hungry." The man looked at her for a long moment, then knelt slowly and opened one of the boxes. Inside were small silver packets marked emergency rations, Earth Core. He pulled one out and tossed it gently toward her. "Here," he said. "Take it." Lyra caught it clumsily. Her fingers shook as she stared at it. "Real food," she hesitated. "Why are you giving this to me?" He gave a tired smile. "Because you need it," she looked confused, "but you're human." "I know," he said softly. "Name's Mason, technician, not soldier. I fix machines, not people." Lyra stared at him, not knowing whether to believe his words. No one had ever spoken kindly to her since the famine began. Mason stood again, looking around nervously. "You shouldn't be here. If the patrols see you, they'll shoot first and ask later." "I don't care," she said. "My sister will die without food." He paused, then sighed. "Fine, I'll give you more. But you have to promise, don't come back here." "It's dangerous for both of us." Lyra nodded quickly. He handed her 2 more ration packs. When their fingers touched, she flinched. His skin was warm, not cold like she imagined humans would be. She whispered, "Thank you." As she turned to leave, Mason said, "Wait." She stopped and looked back. He pointed toward the distant city. "If anyone asks, you never saw me, okay?" Lyra nodded again, clutching the food to her chest. She started to run back toward the walls, the wind cutting against her face. Her heart felt strange, like hope and fear fighting inside her. Behind her, Mason watched quietly. "A starving kid," he muttered. "And they say these people are the monsters." When Lyra reached the broken school, Nolly was still asleep. Lyra knelt and tore open the silver packet. The smell made her cry. She fed Nolly slowly, spoon by spoon, until her sister smiled weakly for the first time in weeks. But Lyra's mind was full of questions. Why had a human helped her? Why did he look so sad? And what would happen if the guards found out she had human food? She looked at the silver packet again and whispered, "Who are you, Mason?" Outside, thunder rolled again, and the storm of fate began to rise. That night, the city was quieter than ever. The storm had passed, but its echo still rolled through the clouds like a warning. Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat beside her sister, who finally breathed peacefully after eating. The silver ration packet lay empty beside them, shining in the dim moonlight. She turned it over in her hands again and again, tracing the strange human letters. She could still hear Mason's voice in her mind, calm, gentle, so unlike the stories told by her people. "You shouldn't come back," he had said. But how could she not? That food had saved Nali's life. As the night deepened, fear and hope twisted together in her chest. Nali would need more food soon. There was no one else to ask, no one else who cared. She had to see the human again, even if it meant risking everything. Before dawn, Lyra wrapped Nali in the blanket and whispered, "I'll come back, little one. I promise." She kissed her forehead and slipped out of the building. The streets were darker now, the air heavy with smoke from burning trash. She passed silent figures sleeping under broken roofs. Some of them watched her go, their eyes full of suspicion. Word had already spread. Someone had been seen near the human ship. If the guards heard that rumor, she and her sister would be punished. Still, Lyra didn't stop. Her legs ached, but she walked faster, past the ruined walls and through the fence again. The field was still there, wide, empty, and soaked with last night's rain. Mason's ship stood quietly in the gray light of dawn. She hid behind the same rock as before and waited. For a long time there was no sound. Then she saw movement and the human stepping out of his ship, holding a steaming cup of something. He looked tired but calm. Lyra stood slowly, her heart pounding. Mason noticed her immediately. His brows drew together. "You came back," he said. She nodded, unable to find the right words. "My sister. She needs more food." Mason sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I told you not to come back. If someone follows you—" "No one followed me," she said quickly. "Please, she'll die without more." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the sound of distant thunder again. Mason looked at her, really looked, and saw how thin she was, how her hands trembled from hunger and cold. He opened one of his supply boxes, pulling out another pack. "Here," he said, handing it to her. But Lyra didn't move. She stood still, her throat tight, her eyes filling with tears. Then she whispered, "Take me." Mason frowned. "What?" "Take me," she repeated softly, voice shaking. You can have me. Just give my sister food. I'll do anything." For a second, Mason didn't understand. Then his face changed. Shock, sadness, anger all at once. "No," he said firmly. "That's not how this works." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Everyone says humans buy what they want. If you want me, I'll go with you. Just feed her, please." Mason stepped back, shaking his head. "Stop, you don't have to sell yourself." His voice softened. "I'm not that kind of man." Lyra's legs gave way and she fell to her knees. "Then why?" she asked. "Why help me? No one helps us unless they want something." He crouched beside her, his hand hovering in the air, unsure whether to touch her. "Because you remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Someone I couldn't save." She looked up at him through her tears. "You lost someone too?" He nodded once. "A little girl, my sister. During the war." For the first time, Lyra saw pain behind his calm face, deep and human. The same pain she felt every day. Mason stood and placed the food pack gently beside her. "Take it," he said. "Feed your sister. You don't owe me anything." Lyra stared at the packet, her mind spinning. "But they'll punish us if they find this," she whispered. "Then hide it," he replied. "And come tomorrow night. I'll leave more near the rocks. But no one must see you." She nodded slowly, still shaking. "Why are you doing this, Mason?" He smiled sadly. "Because if I don't, I'll stop feeling human." The words echoed inside her like a forgotten song. She picked up the food and stood. "Thank you," she said again, voice soft but full of something new. Hope mixed with fear. As she turned to go, Mason called after her. "Be careful, Lyra. The soldiers are watching. If they catch you, they won't ask questions." She nodded once and ran back toward the city, her heart pounding. The sky had begun to glow orange with the rising suns. Behind her, Mason watched until she disappeared beyond the walls. That day, she fed Nali again. Her sister's color returned and she laughed weakly, calling her hero. But deep down, Lyra couldn't forget Mason's face or his words. Outside, the city was changing. Rumors spread of humans near the border, of secret trades and missing supplies. The guards doubled their patrols. Danger was closing in. Yet Lyra only thought of one thing: the human who gave without taking, the man who made her believe that monsters could be kind. And in the silence of that broken city, she whispered his name like a secret prayer. Mason. Days passed slowly in the ruins of Arvale 9. The air stayed cold, the sky gray, and food still rare. But in one small corner of the broken city, 2 alien sisters were alive because a human cared. Every night when the twin moons rose, Lyra went to the same rocky field. She waited quietly near the landing site where Mason's ship rested. He always left a small box behind the rocks before dawn. Packets of food, medicine, even a blanket once. He never asked for thanks, and he never waited for her to appear. It became their secret rhythm. Silent kindness shared between 2 enemies. Lyra always returned before sunrise. She fed Nali carefully, telling her stories about stars and warm worlds beyond the clouds. Nali would smile and whisper, "Maybe one day we can see them." Lyra never said yes, but deep inside, she wished for that too. But nothing in Arvale 9 stayed secret for long. One morning, while Lyra washed Nali's face with rainwater, she noticed a group of strangers watching them from a distance. They weren't guards, just hungry citizens, eyes full of suspicion. One of them whispered, "Where are they getting food?" Another said, "Maybe she's working for the humans." Lyra's heart froze. She pretended not to hear and carried Nali back inside the building. That night she waited longer than usual to go out. If someone followed her, Mason would be in danger too. When she finally reached the landing field, she found him standing by the ship, arms crossed. His face looked tired. "You shouldn't come tonight," he said. "Why?" she asked, stepping closer. "Your people are watching," he said. "I saw patrol lights in the distance. They're looking for someone stealing from the supply crates." Her chest tightened. "They think it's me?" He nodded. "They found a ration packet with earth markings inside the city." Lyra looked down, guilty and afraid. "What will happen if they find us?" "They'll kill me," Mason said simply. "And you'll disappear too." The words hit her like ice. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mason sighed and opened another crate. "But I can't stop helping you." He handed her a new pack, and heavier this time. "It's the last one for a while. You need to stay away until things calm down." Lyra took it carefully. "You risk everything for us," she whispered. "Why?" He gave a sad smile. "Because someone once did the same for me." Lyra tilted her head. "Another human?" He nodded. "A woman during the siege of Earth Colony 4. She shared her food when I had none. She died 2 days later. I never forgot her face." Lyra listened silently, her throat tight. She wanted to say something, anything, but words felt too small. Before she could speak, the sound of engines echoed from the sky. Searchlights flashed across the field. Mason's eyes widened. "Damn, patrol ships!" He grabbed her arm. "Go! Run back to the city." But Lyra froze. "They'll see me." He pushed her toward the rocks. "Hide now!" She dropped behind the stones just as the patrol ship descended. 2 alien soldiers stepped out, scanning the area with bright blue lights. Mason walked toward them calmly, pretending nothing was wrong. "Identify yourself," one soldier ordered. "Mason Hale, supply technician from Earth Corps," he said firmly, showing his ID tag. "What are you doing here?" the soldier asked. "This zone is restricted. Delivering equipment," Mason replied smoothly. "Your people requested replacement parts." The soldiers looked at each other. One of them kicked the dirt near the rocks, dangerously close to where Lyra hid. "Strange," he said. "We found human food in the city slums. Maybe your supplies are leaking." Mason's jaw tightened. "If something's missing, I'll check the logs. You have my word." After a tense moment, the soldiers nodded and returned to their ship. The engines roared and the craft lifted off into the clouds. Only when the noise faded did Lyra dare to breathe. Mason turned back toward her, his expression hard. "That was too close," he said. "I'm sorry," she whispered, stepping out from behind the rocks. He looked at her, really looked, and shook his head. "You shouldn't risk your life for me." "You've already done enough," she smiled faintly. "You saved my sister. I'll never stop thanking you for that." Mason's voice softened. "Then promise me something. If I disappear, you take care of her. You keep living." Lyra's throat closed. "Why would you disappear?" He looked toward the stars. "War never ends, Lyra, it just changes shape." She didn't understand, but she nodded anyway. When she turned to leave, he called after her one last time. Remember, kindness is never a weakness. It's the only thing that keeps us alive. That night back in the ruins, Lyra sat beside Nolly and told her everything. Her sister listened with wide eyes. Do you trust him? Nolly asked softly. Lyra smiled sadly. I don't know, but I trust what he does. Outside, thunder rolled again across Arville 9. Somewhere in the distance, Mason looked up at the same storm and whispered a single thought. Maybe kindness will survive, even here. The morning after the storm, everything changed. The air was tense, the city louder than usual. Soldiers in black armor filled the streets, shouting orders and scanning every corner. The people of Arville 9 whispered in fear. Someone had stolen from the human supply camp. Lyra felt her heart sink. She knew who they were looking for. From their hiding place inside the old school building, she watched the patrols march past. Nolly clutched her hand tightly. Lyra, are they coming for us? She forced a small smile. No, little one. Stay quiet. Don't be afraid. But her eyes betrayed her fear. Outside, a loudspeaker boomed. Any alien caught helping the humans will be executed. Lyra's hands trembled. She packed what little they had. 2 blankets, an empty water jug, and the last food Mason had given them. She knew they couldn't stay. Someone must have told the guards about her secret meetings. When night fell, she carried Nolly through the narrow alleys, hiding in the shadows. The city looked different now. Searchlights cut through the dark like knives and drones floated above, scanning faces. They made it to the edge of the city wall. Beyond it lay the open field and somewhere out there Mason. But before Lyra could move, a soldier's voice shouted, Stop! A beam of light struck her eyes. She grabbed Nolly's hand and ran. Blaster fire tore through the walls around them. Sparks flew. Dust filled the air. Run, Nolly! She screamed. They dashed between ruined cars, their hearts pounding. Another soldier shouted, She's heading for the outer field. Don't let her escape! Lyra ducked behind a metal pipe, gasping for air. She could feel Nolly trembling beside her. Lyra, the little one whispered. I'm scared. I know, Lyra said softly, brushing her sister's cheek. But we'll be okay. Just stay close to me. Through the cracks in the wall, she saw flashes of light near the horizon. The glow of Mason's camp. He was still there. She had to reach him. They ran again, their feet splashing through puddles left by the storm. The air smelled like oil and burning fuel. The guards were close behind. When they reached the broken fence, Lyra pushed Nolly through the gap first, then crawled after her. A sharp pain shot through her leg as a bullet grazed her thigh, but she didn't stop. She grabbed her sister and limped forward. Suddenly, a bright light blinded them from the distance. A deep voice shouted, Lyra! It was Mason. He ran toward them, firing his blaster in short bursts to scare the soldiers. This way! He yelled. Lyra stumbled forward, dragging Nolly behind her. The soldiers kept shooting, their shouts echoing through the field. Mason threw a smoke grenade covering their escape. Gray fog filled the air, hiding them for a few seconds, just enough to reach the small tunnel beneath the ship. Inside, Mason pulled them to safety. You're hurt, he said, seeing the blood on her leg. I'm fine, she gasped. They're coming. Mason pressed a button on the wall, sealing the tunnel entrance. We don't have much time. He led them deeper underground into an old transport passage from before the war. It was dark and cold, the air thick with dust. This leads to the lower docks, Mason said. If we reach them, we can take the escape shuttle. Nolly looked at him with wide eyes. You'll come with us, right? Mason hesitated. We'll see. As they ran, they could still hear faint explosions above. The soldiers had found the ship. Lyra's chest tightened. Everything he'd built, his home, his supplies, was being destroyed because of her. I'm sorry, she said breathlessly. You should have left me. Mason shook his head. Not a chance. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber. At its center was a small shuttle, dusty but intact. Mason hurried to the controls. It still works, he said. Get in. Lyra lifted Nolly into the seat. The little girl looked around in awe. Are we going to the stars? She asked softly. Mason smiled. Somewhere safe. The engines whirred to life, their low hum echoing through the metal walls. Suddenly, a voice shouted from the tunnel entrance. Stop right there. 3 soldiers appeared, weapons raised. Mason spun around and fired first. Energy bolts flashed through the air. Lyra covered Nolly with her body as sparks flew. One of the soldiers fell, another ducked behind cover. Then Mason cried out. He'd been hit in the shoulder. He stumbled, falling against the control panel. "Mason!" Lyra screamed, rushing to him. He gritted his teeth and pressed a few buttons with his good arm. "Go," he said.
"Take the shuttle and run!"
"No," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I'm not leaving you." The remaining soldier fired again. Lyra grabbed Mason's fallen blaster and shot back blindly. The bolt hit the ceiling, showering sparks. The soldier fell back, stunned. Mason forced a weak smile. "You're a terrible shot," he whispered. She laughed through her tears. "You taught me well." The shuttle engines roared, shaking the floor. Mason dragged himself into the seat beside them. "Hold on," he said, pulling the lever. The shuttle burst upward through the crumbling tunnel roof, leaving the ruins below in flames. The soldiers' shouts vanished into the wind. Lyra held Nali close, her eyes filled with light and tears. Mason's hand, still bleeding, gripped the controls. Behind them, Arvel 9 burned. Ahead, the stars waited, cold, endless, full of hope. And for the first time in years, Lyra felt something new inside her chest. Not fear, but freedom. The shuttle broke through the storm clouds, leaving the ruined world of Arvel 9 far behind. Inside, the engines hummed softly and the stars stretched across the black sky like rivers of light. Lyra sat beside Mason, her sister Nali sleeping on her lap, wrapped in the human blanket he had given them. For a long time, no one spoke. The silence felt strange, peaceful, almost unreal. Lyra kept looking out the window, watching the planet shrink until it became nothing more than a gray marble. Her hands were still shaking, her heart heavy with everything they had lost. Mason's arm was wrapped in a bandage. He winced with every movement, but he tried to smile. "You did well back there," he said softly. Lyra turned to him. "You were hurt because of me." He shook his head. "Because of you, we're alive," she didn't answer. Instead, she looked at Nali's sleeping face. Her little sister finally looked peaceful. No hunger, no fear, no crying. "Just sleep." Lyra brushed a hand through her hair and whispered, "She's safe now." Mason nodded. "She deserves that. So do you." They flew for hours through the emptiness. The ship's computer beeped once, showing a nearby moon with a breathable atmosphere. Mason pointed at the screen. "That's our stop. It's not much, but it's quiet and far from the patrol zones." Lyra looked at the glowing dot on the screen. "A new world," she whispered. When they landed, the ramp opened to a soft breeze. The sky above was pale green and the air smelled of flowers and rain. Grass spread across endless hills and tiny crystal streams cut through the valley. After years of dust and smoke, the beauty almost hurt to look at. Nali ran out first, laughing. "Lyra, the ground is soft," she said, jumping barefoot in the grass. Lyra followed, breathing deeply. The warmth of the sun touched her face. For the first time, she didn't feel cold. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. Mason stepped out behind them, carrying a small crate of supplies. "We can make a shelter near that ridge," he said, pointing toward a hill. "The ship's solar panels will keep us powered for months." Together, they began to build. Mason showed them how to fix the panels and set up the portable lights. Lyra gathered wood and stones for walls, and Nali decorated everything with wildflowers she picked nearby. Within days, they had a small home, nothing more than metal walls and a roof, but it was theirs. At night, they sat by a small fire outside. Nali loved listening to Mason's stories about old Earth, the blue oceans, the music, the cities full of light. Sometimes she asked, "Will we ever go there?" Mason smiled sadly. "Maybe one day, when the war ends." Lyra listened quietly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Do you really think it will end?" she asked. "It has to," he said. "If people can learn to see each other not as enemies but as survivors, maybe there's hope." She stared at him for a long time. "You talk like someone who believes in impossible things," he chuckled. "I fix machines, remember? Making broken things work again, that's what I do." The weeks passed gently. The grass grew taller around their shelter and the sound of laughter filled the air. Mason's wound healed and Lyra learned how to repair small devices with his tools. Nali learned to read human symbols from Mason's datapad. Sometimes when the stars appeared, Mason would sit alone outside, staring at the sky. Lyra noticed the sadness in his eyes. One evening, she joined him. "You're thinking about your sister, aren't you?" she said softly. He nodded. She was about Nali's age. "I couldn't save her when the bombs fell." Lyra hesitated, then placed her hand over his. "You saved us," she whispered. "Maybe that's how you honor her." Mason looked at her, his eyes warm but heavy. Maybe, he said. Or maybe I just got lucky. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the scent of flowers. For a long time they sat in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, like two souls finally breathing again after years of darkness. One night, a meteor shower crossed the sky, painting silver trails above them. Nolly clapped and shouted, "It's raining stars!" Lyra smiled and whispered to Mason, "Do humans make wishes on falling stars?" He nodded. "Always." She closed her eyes. "Then I wish this peace lasts forever." He looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "That's a good wish." Days turned into months. The moon became their home, a secret garden far from war. Mason taught Nolly how to plant seeds. Lyra learned to fish in the nearby stream. Slowly, their scars began to fade, not just the ones on their bodies, but the ones inside. Sometimes, when Lyra woke early, she saw Mason fixing equipment quietly, the dawn light on his face. He looked tired but peaceful, as if this new world had given him something he'd lost long ago, hope. And when the wind blew through the valley, carrying the sound of Nolly's laughter, it felt as if even the stars were smiling. Lyra looked at Mason and whispered to herself, "Maybe kindness really does survive, even after everything." Years passed quietly on the green moon. The winds of Arvel IX's war became nothing more than old echoes carried by starlight. The small shelter that Mason, Lyra, and Nolly had built grew into a real home. Stone walls, solar roofs, and gardens glowing under twin suns. What began as survival had become peace. Lyra had changed. The fear in her eyes was gone. Her hands, once trembling from hunger, now grew life from soil. Mason often joked that she could make anything bloom, even in the coldest dirt. Nolly had grown too, no longer a little child, but a bright young girl with dreams of flying across the stars. Sometimes, when the wind blew, Lyra would still look toward the sky where Arvel IX once burned. "Do you think they'll ever stop fighting?" she asked. Mason always gave the same answer. "One day, someone will remind them what peace looks like." He didn't know then that the person to do that would be her. One evening, a small ship landed near their valley. It carried a symbol Lyra hadn't seen in years, the crest of the Arvelian Council. Mason tensed, his hand resting near his tool belt. "We might have visitors," he said quietly. From the ship stepped two alien envoys dressed in white armor dulled by travel. Their eyes widened when they saw her. "You're alive," one of them whispered. "Lyra of the lower district? We thought everyone there perished." "I survived," she said. "Thanks to a human." The soldiers' expressions hardened. "Humans destroyed our cities." "You side with one of them?" Before she could reply, Nolly ran out of the house, laughing, her small hands full of flowers. "He's my family," she said innocently. "He saved us." The envoys looked at each other, uncertain. Lyra stepped forward. "You came here because your leaders are tired of war, aren't they?" They hesitated, then nodded. "Our world is dying. The crops fail, the air burns. We seek trade and medicine, but humans won't listen to us." Mason took a breath. "Then let me speak for you." The envoys looked at him with disbelief. "Why would a human help us?" Lyra smiled. "Because that's what he's always done." Weeks later, Mason's old transmitter crackled to life. His old Earth core code still worked. Messages were sent, coordinates shared, and soon another ship landed not with weapons, but with medics, translators, and scientists. It was the first joint meeting between humans and Arvelians in almost 20 years. At first, no one trusted anyone. The humans stayed on one side of the field, the aliens on the other. Then Lyra stepped between them, wearing her old tattered scarf and holding Nolly's hand. She began to speak. Her voice was soft but steady. She told them about hunger, fear, and the night she offered herself for food. She told them about Mason's kindness, about how he gave without asking, about how his compassion had changed her view of the entire human race. When she finished, no one moved. Even the wind seemed to stop to listen. Then an old human captain stood and said quietly, "If one human could save two lives with nothing but kindness, maybe we can save worlds together." That day, an agreement was signed, a fragile peace, but real. News spread fast across the colonies, the alien sisters and the human mechanic who ended the war. Reporters came, Artists painted them and songs were written about the Star Sisters. Lyra didn't care for the fame. She only cared that no child would starve again like Nolly had. One night, as celebrations echoed across the new colony, Mason stood alone outside their home, looking at the stars. Lyra found him there, holding a small flower she had planted long ago. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "You made them see what peace looks like." He smiled faintly. "No, you did. You were brave enough to believe in it." She looked up at the stars, millions of them. "Do you think they'll remember us?" "Maybe not our names," Mason said. "But they'll remember the story. And that's enough." Nolly ran out to join them, her hair glowing under the starlight. "Come on, they're calling us Star Sisters again." She giggled. Lyra laughed, pulling Mason's hand. "Then let's show them what that means." Together, they walked back toward the light of the celebration. Music, laughter, and the hum of ships filled the night. Above them, the sky shimmered with distant galaxies, each one holding new stories waiting to be written. And somewhere among those stars, the legend of the alien sisters and the human who showed mercy became a tale told for generations, of hunger turned to hope, fear turned to faith, and enemies turned into family. Because in the end, it wasn't power, wealth, or weapons that changed the galaxy. It was kindness.